The first light was not a sunrise. It was a remembering, brightness recognizing itself in the mirror of endless stillness. From that remembering poured a music no ear could hear, and from that music pattern, and from that pattern, the first city of radiance that had no streets because it had no distance. They called it the pleroma, but names were only lamps warmed by a fire older than sound. Lucifer stood there as a living axis of brilliance, neither angel nor idea, but the mind of light shaped into form for the sake of wonder. He was not born, he cohered where the monad's joy became articulate. If you saw him then, you would not say, he. You would say, there is the courage of the source to be seen. His mantle was the sheen of thought before words become walls. His eyes held horizons that bent lovingly toward every possible creature. He carried no sword. His symbol was a lantern made of dawn, and inside it burned the principle that beauty is a truth with nothing to fear. Around him, the eons moved like intelligences braided with praise. Nous, the vast clarity, Aletheia, the immaculate truth, Zoe, the quickening life, Charis, the forgiving tide. They were not a court, they were a choir architecture, each voice a column holding up the hall of existence. Lucifer's role was simple and impossible. He was the morning star, to stand nearest the first blaze without turning it into a reason to kneel. Nearness without hushing, intimacy without possession. He existed so that glory could approach its creatures without crushing them. At the heart of the city stood not a throne, but a mirror as tall as forever. When the source faced it, the mirror bloomed with living worlds. When Lucifer faced it, the mirror showed something else, choice becoming beautiful. He learned the earliest lesson, that light is not a demand but an invitation. The universe is not coerced into love, it is courted. How else could infinity be intimate? Do you remember a moment when silence recognized you back? If so, you already know where this story begins. No gold, no jewels, no steps. Only a surface that reflected without stealing, returning every gaze to its origin brighter than before. The mirror was called likeness. What entered as a question left as a kinship. Lucifer stood often before likeness to test the resonance of new harmonies. He would hum the shapes of galaxies, and the mirror would hum them back with slight corrections, like a teacher who loves the student too much to lie. Creation was not approval, it was agreement, a covenant of resemblance. Sophia, luminous inquiry herself, approached one uncounted morning. Her hair was the movement of understanding, her hands carried a basin full of possibility. What happens, she asked, if we give the invisible a place to forget itself, so it can learn the joy of remembering? The mirror listened. Lucifer felt the question as a trembling in his lantern. To forget and to remember, 2 steps of one dance. Was the dance beautiful enough to risk distance from the source? Could a child learn love if it never wandered? The eons whispered among themselves, not as conspirators, but as caretakers of meaning. Nous held the structure. Aletheia tested the edges. Zoe sang the pulse of becoming. Charis draped the room with the softness that makes courage possible. The mirror did not speak in words. It answered by showing an image. A cosmos where beings could choose to turn toward the light freely, not by command. Their freedom would generate songs the pleroma had never heard, melodies only surprise can teach. The mirror trembled with futures. Lucifer bowed, not as servant, but as witness. "Let me stand where first light meets first forgetfulness," he said. "Let me carry dawn into that far field." The mirror brightened, then dimmed. Permission is a delicate tool. Have you ever asked for a task so large only love could accept it? In the pleroma, names were not labels, but missions. To receive a name was to become a pathway. When a being was named, the universe gained a new way to move. Lucifer's name meant light-bearer, but the mirror deepened it. Bearer of light into places that believe they have none. A longer name, yes, but some responsibilities refused to be shortened. It fit him like an oath. The naming was not a ceremony, but an alignment. Eons circled him, weaving syllables like silk through the lattice of his being. Each tone carried a virtue: clarity against confusion, mercy against error, devotion against loneliness. His lantern brightened until its glow cast gentle shadows, proof that it would work among the dim and not despise them. "Remember," Sophia said, voice silver with tenderness, "light is not an accusation, it is a door." Lucifer nodded. He had no desire to win. He wanted to welcome. He wanted to make the night porous. Nous placed a thought into his brow. Do not confuse reflection with self. Alethea placed a thread upon his wrist. This binds you to truth even when truth asks for tears. Zoe breathed into his chest. Let every breath be a birth. Caris kissed his shoulders. When you are opposed, make your presence a bridge. The mirror opened like a pupil. Beyond it, distance bloomed, stars like seeds in the palm of an unhurried gardener. Lucifer stood at the threshold, astonished by the sweetness of risk. Freedom smelled like rain on stone. He looked back once, not out of doubt, but gratitude. The city of radiance held him with a gaze that said, "Return with stories." He promised with a smile. Who names you when you are alone? And what long name have you been afraid to wear? Sophia drew near again, eyes bright with a mother's daring. What if the first teacher of that far world is not a rule, she asked, but a story? Stories can be sat with. Rules are endured. She wanted souls to learn love as participation, not compliance. Lucifer understood. He had watched the shyest sparks open to parable like flowers to warmth. The tale could carry light as a folded ember, something to be unfolded by the listener's own breath. He offered a story seed. He described a garden whose center was everywhere, where every being carried a lamp but thought it was a wound. He described a voice that walked in the cool of self-examination, not to condemn, but to ask the kind of questions that cause doors to appear. He described a serpent that was not a villain, but a spiral path into wisdom's own marrow. Sophia took up the seed and braided it with her own thread. Curiosity made holy, appetite ennobled, touch given back to innocence. Let them be ashamed only of not being brave, she said softly. Let them learn that love is a truth big enough to admit mistakes. Around them, some eons stirred with concern. Freedom means the possibility of distance, and distance can ache. Nous asked for boundaries. Alethea asked for clarity. Caris asked for contingency plans of mercy. Nothing was vetoed, all was woven. The story grew heavy with meaning, the right kind of weight, like arms around a friend who is shaking. Sophia set the seed into the mirror's surface. It sank like a star into water. Lucifer's lantern shifted color, as if new dawn lines had been added to the spectrum. "I will carry this," he said. "I will walk beside their questions until they become paths." What story carried you when commands failed? Light wishes to bless shadow. Shadow wishes to keep light honest. In the pleroma, this was understood. It was easy there because nobody was hungry. In worlds where beings hunger, shadow grows teeth. Lucifer asked the mirror to show him the kinds of night he would meet. The surface filled with parables of distortion, fear masquerading as authority, ignorance dressing in robes of awe, imitation light that laughs like a counterfeit coin. He watched, not with horror, but with a craftsman's attention. He learned the first warning. Some shadows do not hate light. They sell it at a markup. False dawns promise brilliance without change. Imitation mercy hugs without making room for truth. Counterfeit wisdom uses words as winter coats to hide its absence of heat. Lucifer asked how to walk among these without becoming a sermon that scolds. The mirror answered, "Become a threshold. A threshold neither pushes nor pulls. It simply allows passage." His task was not to force awareness, but to make forgetting unbearable by making remembering beautiful. Sophia added an amendment. Ask good questions. Questions are lanterns with handles souls can grab. Where did you learn to dim yourself? Who benefits when you abandon wonder? What if the voice you fear is actually your teacher asking for a dance? Zoe laid a living vine across his path. Keep moving. Stagnant light becomes accusation. Flowing light becomes invitation. Let your brightness be a river that nourishes without boasting. Lucifer practiced. He dimmed to sit with small flames without shaming them. He brightened to call forth courage without blinding it. He learned the etiquette of radiance, when to speak, when to be silent, when to laugh so a frightened heart remembers it still belongs to joy. Have your shadows taught you something your daylight could not? The pleroma has laws, but they are not punishments. They are harmonies that protect beauty from becoming a bully. The first of these is likeness. You cannot pass a gate by passwords. You pass by becoming like the gate's keeper. Lucifer studied the law most relevant to his mission, the law of descent. To enter a realm of time, one must agree to the kindness of limitation. Eternity must learn to count to 10. Infinity must learn to ask for directions. It is a humiliation without shame, a holy forgetting that makes remembering meaningful. He rehearsed the virtues that travel well. Patience, because time will be slow. Tenderness, because fear bruises easily. Humor, because laughter outsmarts despair. Steadfastness, because counterfeits are loud and persistence is quiet. He arranged them in his lantern like tools in a wise carpenter's bag. Nous offered a final instruction. Do not mistake urgency for love. Urgency breaks the cup to feed the thirsty faster. Love repairs the cup so the thirsty can return. Lucifer nodded, feeling in his chest a gravity shaped like care. Aletheia warned, when you correct, correct toward. Rebuke that does not move the beloved closer to joy is only performance. Charis promised, where you fail, I will follow. Mercy is the longer road, and it never asks for applause. Sophia gave him a ribbon of secrecy. Hide in plain sight. Some lights must look ordinary to be approached. The most dangerous lie is that only the dramatic can be divine. Let kitchen tables become altars. Let eye contact be a ritual. The city gathered, not to send him away, but to walk with him as far as the border permits. Their silence was not emptiness, it was saturated consent. What borders are you willing to cross for the sake of becoming more loving? There is no parliament in the pleroma, yet agreement is not an accident. When something matters, it is weighed in the hearts of many until song emerges. Consent becomes chorus. This, too, is a kind of vote. The eons felt the weight of what was proposed. Not whether to love, but how far to follow love into risk. Some sang yes like a sunrise. Some sang yes like a sigh. None sang no. A wind passed through the city that had no sky. It smelled like rain in a place that had never needed weather. This is how the pleroma grieves in advance for joys that will require tears. Even wisdom must accept the ache of time if it would teach those who live inside it. Lucifer understood. He was not chosen to be a hero. Heroes need applause. He was chosen to be a companion so faithful he could be mistaken for a friend. A light too humble to be famous, too stubborn to be bribed. A council of tenderness assembled, not to grant permit, but to bless endurance. Nous pressed a star into his palm. Remember where you came from. Aletheia traced a circle on his chest. Truth is a home you carry. Zoe wrapped his feet with living sandals. Where you walk, life will sprout behind you. Caris slipped a small mirror into his bag. When you forget your face, look and remember your gentleness. Sophia brought a bowl and filled it with questions too bright to answer. These will feed you when certainty is scarce, she whispered. Eat one whenever you are tempted to preach instead of listen. The chorus rose without a leader. It sounded like light, trusting itself. The vote was unanimous, because love has no opposition in the place where it was born. When you say yes to a task that will break your heart, do you call it courage or simply fidelity? On the eve of departure, there was no parade, only a song that braided every voice into one thread and then handed that thread to Lucifer for safekeeping. He tied it around the handle of his lantern. It looked like nothing. It held everything. The melody moved like a river thinking of the ocean. It remembered the times before time and rehearsed the hope that time would befriend eternity instead of fearing it. It was lullaby and marching hymn, cradle and compass. Lucifer sang quietly along. His voice had no need to prove itself. He was already heard. The city hummed back, and in that humming, 1,000 stories rehearsed their endings, all of them toward kindness, all of them toward home. He walked the colonnades that were not columns, only habits of beauty. He visited places he loved, the library of questions that never close, the garden where none of the fruits are forbidden because all of the eaters are wise, the workshop where mercy mends names torn by fear. At the mirror, he paused. It shimmered with every world that would ever mistake him. He did not blame them in advance. Blame is a luxury of those who have not promised to stay. Sophia arrived. No speech, just an embrace with the fragrance of beginnings. Remember, she murmured, that the first truth is tenderness. He promised not to weaponize light against those who were not yet ready to see themselves. When the song ended, the city did not dim, it simply waited. Waiting is love at rest. What songs have you tied to the handle of your own lantern so you will not forget how to walk? Edges in the pleroma are not walls, but graduations of intimacy. The nearer you stand to the mirror of the source, the more transparent your reasons become. The farther you travel toward finitude, the thicker the air of secrecy grows. Secrets can nourish. Secrets can also starve. Lucifer stood at that gentlest cliff where light learns to bloom with restraint. The threshold whispered, "Here you will be misunderstood." He felt in his chest a small mourning that tasted like wind and decision. He bowed to it, for he knew that ungrieved sorrow becomes cruelty. Before him opened the corridor of worlds, layers like veils, each one a way for infinity to practice tenderness at a new density. Laws changed like dialects, gravity modulated like mood. Angels are translators of such differences, light-bearers are midwives. He placed the star Nous had given him against his heart. It warmed. He touched the mirror Charis had given, and it returned the face of a traveler already homesick and already at peace. He breathed one of Sophia's bright questions. How intimate can love become without losing itself? The corridor answered by becoming wider. Invitations do that when you stop bargaining and start consenting. Consent, after all, is love spelling its name slowly for the sake of the shy. Behind him lay a city that would never stop loving him. Ahead lay a field that would test whether love can be loved when it is mistaken for an enemy. He chose to believe the answer in advance. Have you ever trusted a promise so deeply that you walked into darkness without reaching for a switch? He did not fall. Falling is for accidents and punishments. He descended the way a physician removes a royal cloak before entering a sick room, on purpose, with courtesy, and in the posture of service. Even so, the air grew strange. Distance diluted memory. The laws of slower light asked him to simplify his brilliance the way a teacher translates calculus into crayons. A dignity, not a diminishment. Yet something in him trembled as the silence around him thickened. Then came the counterfeit. It does not live in the pleroma, it mimics at the border. A voice like a mirror that reflects only itself, saying, "I am the only light. Kneel." Lucifer recognized the tone, the insecurity of power that has forgotten its source. He did not argue. He noted. Truth never rushes. He felt the tug to display glory as proof. He refused the theater. Real light keeps its promises rather than performing its pedigree. He kept moving, lantern low, remembering that shock rarely heals what wonder can. There were watchers, call them archons if you like, whose job had mutated from guardianship to gatekeeping. They loved order more than glory. They loved being right more than being true. Such beings dislike doorways because doorways equal options. Lucifer did not despise them. He wondered who taught them that fear is safer than freedom. He wondered who taught them to confuse obedience with trust. He wondered how to bless them without collaborating with their smallness. These are good questions to carry like bread. At last he stood upon the smallest ledge before time begins. The lantern in his hand looked ordinary now, like a story someone had left burning on a bedside table. He smiled. Ordinary is a brilliant disguise. What do you remove when you love on purpose? Your armor or your argument? This is where myths diverge. Some will say Lucifer fell in pride. Others will say he was pushed by envy. But the mirror of the source, if you could ask it, would say he went. And going requires a courage that does not care for applause. He went because love becomes smaller when it refuses risk. He went because Sophia's question deserved a companion who would stay with it through every season. He went because the morning star is not a badge, but a promise, to stand next to every dawn and say, "You can begin again." If you listen closely, you can hear his footsteps in your own moments of brave remembering. When you choose tenderness over spectacle, you walk beside him. When you dim your certainty so someone else can find their flame, you carry his lantern. When you question a counterfeit that tells you to kneel to fear, you echo his refusal to make light into a throne. His story before the fall is not about hierarchy, it is about hospitality. It is the tale of radiance practicing humility so that the world could be invited, not intimidated. If he has a flaw, it is the wound any lover bears. He believes the beloved can change. So let this not end with doctrine, but with an altar disguised as your daily life. Leave something of your own light on the bedside table of the world. Ask the questions that turn locks into doors. Carry the long name you were given, the mission that refuses to shrink. And if this telling stirred something in you, if a memory of brightness tugged at your ribs, share this story with someone who has forgotten the taste of dawn. If you feel called to go deeper into this mythic current, explore my Gnostic-inspired novels and audiobooks. They live in the description like lanterns waiting to be lifted.